We will now call the business session of the January 19th, 2021 City Council meeting to order at 6:29 p.m. On March 16th, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16th, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with physical distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded. The video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the governor and the attorney general, statutes that may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that the governmental body offers alternative methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak or submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to register with the city secretary's office by 1 p.m. today. Individuals who registered to speak on an agenda item must limit their comments to 3 minutes. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted one 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items they wish to address. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous while addressing the city council shall be removed if directed by the presiding officer. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is to consider the minutes of the January 5th, 2021 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections? There being no corrections, the minutes will stand approved as presented. Clint, and now we will move on to public hearing 2021-33.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution approving the following subdivision plats. Preliminary plat of the Eagles Landing Edition and preliminary plat of the Deer Valley Estates Edition. By a vote of 9-0, the Plan Commission recommended that the subdivision plats be approved with conditions. Subsequently, the applicants provided responses to the Plan Commission conditions of approval. In accordance with state law and city ordinance, the commission must reply to an applicant's response by taking further action on the plat no later than the 15th day after the date the responses were submitted. Due to the holidays, the commission was unable to meet this time period. Therefore, the plat is deemed a recommendation for approval by the Plan Commission. The responses provided by the applicants have met all the conditions recommended by the Plan Commission at their December 14th, 2020 hearing.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments. Did anyone register to speak on this item?
Yes, sir. We do have the first speaker who registered is Mr. Mark Rossetto, and I will unmute him now.
Good evening, Mr. Rossetto.
I've heard the work session, and I'm basically on the call just to say we appreciate what engineering and development and utilities have done to have this project move as quickly as it has through the approval process, and that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Rossetto? Thank you. And I believe is Mr. Bell on the line as well, Esmeralda?
Yes, sir. Let me unmute him. Mr. Bell?
Yes, this is Jacob Bell with Walker Partners, 823 Washington Avenue, Suite 100. We are the developer's engineer for Deer Valley Estates, and we're just here to answer any questions if you have them. We appreciate your consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Bell? Thank you, Mr. Bell. Are there any other individuals registered to speak?
No, sir, not for this item.
All right, we will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Porteroot?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Sabido?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes. That motion carries. The next item is to consider the consent agenda. We have received a speaker card for agenda items, resolution 2021-041, which we will remove from the consent agenda and vote on separately. I believe Mr. Northcutt is going to be speaking on this item. Is he on the line?
Yes, let me allow him to speak. Mr. Northcutt, are you on the line?
Yes.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. I did a minute and a half. Because I had another comment. So on this one,
Briefly, will Mr. Northcutt speak to both items now?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Northcutt, you'll need to speak to item 2021-041 as well as ordinance 2021-049, both at this time.
at the same time.
Yes, sir. And you'll get full 3 minutes for both of those.
Okay.
Thank you.
On 041, the World Meteorological Organization has announced that the year 2020 tied for the hottest year ever recorded. Now, the IPCC warns that to avoid catastrophic planetary warming, the world must cut emissions 45% in the next 9 years. Now, since they produce 70% of emission cities, including Waco, must rapidly slash emissions. The agenda packet does recognize the possibility of purchasing the Rosenbauer electric aerial fire truck, but claims that they rule it out because of higher upfront costs of $1.2 million. Yet this $1.2 million is remarkably similar to the stated lease purchase price of the diesel Spartan fire truck, $1.17 million. And over vehicle lifetime, the electric truck has significant cost savings in maintenance, fuel, and fluids. And there's also concern about charging infrastructure. No specifics were given. The reported 4-hour charging time would indicate a level 2 charge requirement, which is not expensive at all, a 220 outlet and a cheap charger. Now, very importantly, the electric fire truck would eliminate exposure of fire personnel to carcinogenic diesel engine pollution. So we call on the council to delay approval and really seriously consider an electric fire truck, which is a truck of the future, instead of, sticking with the past. On ordinance 49, reaching net zero emissions is not just about EVs and solar panels. Clearly, all sectors must be involved. Now, natural gas accounts for 40% of US GHG emissions. Thus, construction of all electric homes and businesses is a mandatory part of decarbonization. The advantages of all electric construction, of course, fighting climate change, but also, number 2, safer structures with less risk of explosion, healthier homes so that methane from cook stoves don't increase asthma in our children, cheaper construction since you only have one fuel system, and often cheaper operation and maintenance costs. In California, over 50 cities have already tightened rules on natural gas in homes, and it's in your file attached and gives examples of those. A wide variety of different type of bans. So for the sake of our children's future on this planet and their health right now, we strongly recommend that the city vote no on this ordinance and begin to develop a policy for transitioning to all electric residents and businesses. Many options are available, in ways to do that, from mild to very strict, but it's time to start. We only have 9 years to make significant progress. So the council embraced the epidemiologic science in dealing with the pandemic, and that's fantastic. But we must do the same with climate science and act now rather than just continue the status quo, where we won't make any change if we just continue what we've done in the past. Thank you. And there's files for both of those comments that if you'd like to review those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Northcutt. Again, he was speaking both on resolution 2021-41 and ordinance 2021-49. We'll now go back exclusively or continue on exclusively with resolution 2021-41. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval. Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Oh, discussion. Bradley, can you speak to some of the points that Dr. Northcutt brought up?
Sure. I think, we did some review I assume you're talking about the fire truck.
Yes.
Primarily. We did a review of, a quick review of the truck that's being purchased in Los Angeles. And a couple things stood out pretty quickly. For one, the price that was compared by Dr. Norcutt was for the ladder truck, and the capabilities of the electric truck LA bought is not a ladder truck. It's more like our pumper engine. This would be the first electric fire truck, to our knowledge, in the entire country. And it's a pilot program that we're anxious to see how it functions in Los Angeles for this first year. It should go into service later this year, as we understand, like October, November, and we'll keep our eyes on that. Another thing that's a fact behind the situation is there is a 2-hour operational window on that truck using EV power. And that's a consideration for a geography like ours that's spread out. That's a consideration that's not present in Hollywood. That's the district that EV truck is going to serve. And that's just a different environment than what we face in Waco. I do think, as we noted in the item, we're interested to watch and see the transition for any of our large vehicles beyond fire and including fire. When this makes sense, you'll certainly see that in the recommended actions from the staff.
Bradley, with that as a follow-up question, since we're moving forward with the leasing multiple fire trucks right now, let's say this fire truck that LA Fire Department purchased does phenomenal, and we're like, this is the truck of the future. We want this. How does this decision that we're voting on today affect our ability to pivot?
Well, I think, we're going to have, and I may need Assistant City Manager Holt to jump in here on the remainder of the apparatus replacement schedule. But this is only 7 of our frontline vehicles. We're going to have multiple more fire trucks to acquire over the next few years. And that will give us perhaps a more appropriate inflection point to make this decision. Ryan, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so in our schedule to get the entire fleet on a replacement schedule, 2 trucks are coming up in 2 years. So we should have a good firm view of what the electric capabilities are before we start making preparations for that purchase.
I think I just want to go on record saying I appreciate both the city perspective here and the point that Dr. Northcutt is raising, and would love to hold us to this commitment to really pay attention to what LA Fire Department is doing, potentially have a conversation with them in the next year to see how the first year has gone, so that way we can transition the fleet in this direction, whether it's a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now.
Excellent.
Thanks, Councilmember.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porteroo,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. The motion carries. The next item is the consent agenda, which consists of resolutions 2021-34 through 2021-48, with the exception of resolutions 2021-41. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porteroo,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek.
Yes. That motion carries. There are 4 ordinances for consideration on second reading. Actually, sorry, there are 4 ordinances for consideration. The first one is on first reading. It is ordinance 2021-49.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, amending section 6-26 through 6-36 of Article 2 and section 6-239 of Article 4, Chapter 6, Buildings and Building Regulations, and amending sections 10, 20, 1021, and 1024 of Article 2, Chapter 10, Fire Prevention and Protection of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, to adopt various 2018 international codes relating to the construction, renovation, use, and maintenance of buildings and building systems, and adopting the 2020 National Electric Code to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, providing for severability, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a savings clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing for a penalty, providing for an enforcement date, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is over the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to council on first reading.
Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Bradley, could you speak to this one as well?
Are there, in relation to the comments from Dr. Northcutt?
Yes, sir. In terms of like us having, like phasing out natural gas in the city, having some sort of like set indicators or goals over the next 5 years, 10 years.
Sure. I'll say that, this item of the international building codes and the national electric code are items that relate to how things are built safely in our community. They don't necessarily, in my opinion, I'll do some deeper dives, of course, in response to Dr. Northcutt and your question, council member. They don't necessarily dictate should you allow natural gas construction or not. I think that's a bigger conversation than the building code conversation. But I'd be happy to provide an informal report in the coming meetings as we can visit and more fully respond.
Okay, so perhaps this could be a part of just a larger city climate action plan, as opposed to adopting this pre-established set of guides.
I would recommend that, because one of the main reasons we do the code updates is to ensure we maintain our ISO rating, and the codes, the adoption of the codes is a significant criteria in that process.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hey, Bradley, and just to clarify also, in order for the Waco Fire Department to keep its ISO status, updating the international code and the 2020 national code, electrical code is a must, correct?
It is. You need to stay within one edition of the most current edition. The current edition is 2020. Currently, we're on 15 on most of these. We need to move to the 2018 to stay within one edition of the most currently adopted code.
And with the Waco Fire Department having an ISO status, that is beneficial to our constituency because they could even get some tax breaks on their home insurance as well.
That's correct. We're one of only about 300 jurisdictions in the country that have an ISO 1 status. And so that is something that particularly important that we maintain and keep the codes fresh enough that we don't lose our standing.
Okay, thank you, sir. I just wanted to make sure that was the case. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Sir. Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porterud,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes. That motion carries. We will now move to ordinance 2021-051 for second reading.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as 1, a 2.807 acre tract of land situated in the Tomos de la Vega Survey, abstract number 43, City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Block 10 of Riddle's Addition, in addition to the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, recorded in Volume 111, page 432 of the plat records of McLennan County, Texas, being a portion of the 4.668 acre tract of land described in the deed to La Justa de Waco LLC, recorded in document number 2020-00637 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, and also being all of fourth tract and a portion of first tract and third tract described in volume 1315, page 560 of the deed records of McLennan County, Texas. And 2, a 1.861 acre tract of land situated in Tomos de la Vega Survey, abstract number 43, City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Block 10 of Riddle's Addition, in addition to the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, recorded in volume 111, page 432 of the plat records of McLennan County, Texas, being a portion of a 4.668 tract of land described in the deed to La Josta de Waco LLC, recorded in document number 2020-006637 of the official public records in McLennan County, Texas, and also being all of second tract and a portion of first tract and third tract described in volume 1315, page 560 of the deed records in McLennan County, Texas, known as 1018 North Loop Drive, shall be changed from C3 and R2 district classifications and become and be designated to O2 and C2 district classifications, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on January 5th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porteroup,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes. That motion carries. The next is ordinance 2021-051 on second reading.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provides the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as lots 20, B3, and A4, and 21, Block 20, Bagby Addition, known as 1200, 1212, and 1214 Spade Avenue, shall be changed from Planned Unit Development District classification to become and be designated to C2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on January 5th, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porteroup,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes. That motion carries, and we'll now move to ordinance 2021-052 on second reading.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as Lot 16, Block 4, Proctor Springs Addition, known as 2007 North 5th Street, shall be changed from R2 district classification and become and be designated to O3 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on January 5th, 2021.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Holmes,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Porteroup,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Sabido,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. We will now have the hearing of visitors. We will now open the hearing of visitors. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we will provide an opportunity for the public to present concerns or address issues that are not matters for consideration on the listed agenda items. Council is
Mayor?
not, yes.
if you don't mind, I can also let you know that you don't probably have to read the rest of that item because we don't have anybody register, but that's up to you if you'd like to continue.
I don't need to read anymore. Thank you for letting me know.
But you will you can close the hearing of visitors.
Great. We will close the hearing of visitors. And we will also then, before we re-adjourn to executive session, I will just open to say, are there any council member reports on committees, boards, or commission liaison visits? Or any future agenda items? If not, then I want to make sure I read this right. We will now recess the business session to go back into executive session as read into the record by the city secretary at 6:54 p.m.
Notice is hereby given the City Council will go into executive session in accordance with the following provisions. 2, real property, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, and 3, economic development, Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.087. We are now in executive session at 6:54 p.m.